It being 6:15 PM on Wednesday, October 9th, I will call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Since we have at least one member online, we will take a roll call. Kyle Pike here.
David Fuller here.
Jonas Fight here.
Deborah Moran here.
All right, so we have 6 members and we have 4 members present, so we have a quorum. I will, as a point of interest, say that we have another individual that has put in an application, so we may have 7 members, a full committee, the next time we meet. The first thing I would I'll make a note of that I'm going to be out of town from November 5th to November 13th. So if there's a need for a meeting that we'll have it coordinated between Mike and Dave here as getting a quorum going. I'm hoping that between tonight's meeting and a week from tonight, that we won't need another meeting before November 14th when I'll be back. The next quick item I'd like to do is the quorum. Since we have 6 members now, I'd like us to just make a point of understanding that we need to have 4 members for a quorum. When we get to a full membership of 7, it's kind of cut and dry. We need 4, a majority for a quorum. We will need 4 as long as we have the 6. If the committee should again be less than 7 or 6, like it was last year for a while, I'd like to have an understanding of committee members that will always go with a quorum of a majority, so that if we had 5 members, 3 is the quorum. If we had 4 members, 3 is the quorum. Does anybody object to that?
No.
No objection.
Okay. The next item is just a point of information. I've been communicating with the 2 chairmen of the finance committees from the other 2 towns in Silver Lake, Halifax and Plimpton. And we're going to try to get a kind of a subcommittee going where we will try to have more of a joint front in front of the Silver Lake people when it comes to budget planning, budget analysis, et cetera. So that's just a point of information. What we're leaning towards is having no more than 1 or 2 members from each of the 3 committees meet a couple of times just to have some strategy sessions, et cetera. But where we won't have any school budgets, I'm sure, much earlier than February 15th. I just wanted that out as a piece of information. When I get more specifics, we'll talk about it, but I don't think there'll be any need for any kind of a meeting or anything before the middle of February or even later. My last item here, where I would like a little bit of discussion, is once the people have been around here for a while, remember that we used to have a budget advisory committee. Back in November or October of 23, when we had the fall town meeting, there was we made some changes in the budget process, the bylaw concerning the budget process, so that now we will have a meeting before November 1st. I'm sure that town administrator Keith Hickey here, and we'll be setting something up. And the way the bylaw is stated now, all members of the committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Capital Planning Committee, the Finance Committee, and the School Committee, the local school committee, are to meet and discuss so-called budget parameters. What that usually has come down to is as simple as, number one, what would we like to recommend as capital expenditure number for the next fiscal year? Number two, what would we like to recommend for the operating budget? Okay. Generally, we've talked about two kinds of budgets. A level services budget, which is nothing more than saying, hey, we want to recommend budgets that allow our departments, including the schools, to do business as usual, the same services, provide the same services, and whatever funding it takes to do that. As opposed to a level funding budget, which we've discussed a few times, is, hey, maybe Kingston's getting to the point where we need to consider a level funding year in order to stop these kind of over the hill budget increases that we've been faced with, especially coming from the schools. Now, and I've always tried to steer us towards a percentage recommendation too. Rather than just saying level funded or level services, I've tended to say, hey, why don't we recommend we'd like to see a level services budget, but capped at, say, a 4% increase. I think I've usually tried to say 3 or 3.5%, with the idea that we all know Proposition 2.5 allows us to increase budgets by 2.5%. Based upon the real estate values that we have in place. And then I've always figured that we get around another percent from the additional new growth, we call it. The new growth being, new buildings in town, additions to current buildings in town, perhaps some new growth in some of the other revenues like automobile excise tax, ambulance fees, etc. So I guess I open it up to the floor to anybody's thoughts concerning what they would like the finance committee to be ready to recommend to this, in effect, replacement budget advisory committee for the next fiscal year. Questions?
Thank you. Is there a concern that as the rapid rise in real estate values declines, I don't mean to go down, but they stop rising as much as they will, that would then hamper you in that way from, hamper us in that way from keeping up with the annual rises in revenue that we've maybe gotten used to in the last 2-3 years?
It does have somewhat of an impact, but usually there's an offset, and it tends to be more, it has more of an impact on what Joe Blow pays versus what Sally Smith pays. So that, but yes, I think that if we suddenly had a 10% reduction in real estate values across the board, it would have a negative impact on the town's ability to raise taxes.
Okay.
Dave, do you have any thoughts concerning level services versus level funded?
No, I wasn't prepared to think about it either.
Okay. Well, we don't have to make a decision tonight.
No, but I'll
But
be,
I think it's important. I remember last year I went to the so-called budget advisory committee. It used to be that we just had the chair people of the committees go. And I felt last year that I went with my personal recommendations, but I really hadn't vented it very well across the whole committee. I personally am starting to think seriously about, I've mentioned it every year. Well, I've always backed off and said we need to do level services. However, with my lack of success and the finance committee's lack of success of keeping, especially the school budgets, under control. Okay, I am seriously considering that when we do just take a vote on what the finance committee is going to recommend, that maybe going to recommend, this is the year I want to recommend level funding across the board. That means level funding. If your budget was $4 million last year, it's $4 million this year. I'm doing that as an attempt to control some of the increases. Do I really believe we'll ever have a year where we'll really have 100% level funded budget? Not unless we have a depression, probably. But I just think that, last year we tried our best to say 3.5%. Then as we went along, we compromised and we ended up with a bottom line increase, including in schools of, I don't know, somewhere over 5%, 5 to 6%. And damn it, 5 to 6% is not sustainable. We also, I would like to do the best I can as the finance committee to work towards a budget that won't require a Proposition 2.5 override. And unless the schools come in close to 3.5%, I don't see how we can get by without doing a 2.5 override, because we just don't have the reserves left. Last year, our operating budget, our real estate assessment, what people are going to be paying in their real estate taxes or are paying, okay? We have, since I've been on this finance committee off and on now for over 10 years, we've always tried to maintain what I call excess levy capacity of somewhere around $1 million to $2 million. And the last 2 or 3 years before this year, it was 1.5 to 2.5 million, which meant that push came to shove, we could have taxed residents another $2 million. When we got through town meeting and with the current budget, we were at around $500,000. So we are close to our levy limit. And for those of you that don't know what the levy limit is, the levy limit is what you can tax the residents without going through a Proposition 2.5 override. Okay, I believe that we could get a 2.5 override through town meeting without much of a problem. But that 2.5 override has to go to the ballot. And I think that will be a challenge in Kingston, as it has been the last few years in Hanover, in Weymouth, I think even Braintree, that it's much more difficult to get a 2.5 override through. So that's long and short of it, why Kyle Pike is going to be as one member of Finance Committee recommending a level funded budget for next year.
But if we're gonna go there, we gotta go there. You gotta stick with it.
Absolutely.
It's not come off of it later.
I agree.
It's what it is.
Yes, Keith.
Thank you. So I appreciate you taking the time to give me a minute to speak. I guess I try to reiterate, Mr. Fuller's point. Whatever budget goal the entire Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the school department or school committee, excuse me, come up with when we meet sometime prior to November 1st, whatever that goal is, I would ask respectfully that we adhere to that goal. My concern very candidly is if it's a level funded budget, that's going to impact jobs. And I understand that, and we'll bring something forward if that's the direction we're given. But I don't want to impact people. I don't want to turn people's lives upside down by telling them there's a chance, or the budget that is being proposed includes a reduction in force. And have those individuals have to go through the anxiety of potentially upwards of 5 months of concern to have members of the school committee, the board of selectmen, and the finance committee backtrack and step off of that. When we, I asked to modify from a budget advisory committee to more of an all-encompassing school committee, finance committee, board of selectmen in the bylaw, to try to get buy-in from all three boards. Everybody can hear what everybody has to say, and then we all have a single goal to move forward with. And both the school and the town works to meet that goal. I will commit to this group and the board of selectmen, whatever goal is established, I'll meet that goal. And bring a budget that meets the expectations of that committee. I would urge all the committees to hold everybody accountable to the same standard. Because in past years, my impression has been that the town departments have sacrificed and met goals and others haven't. And that has caused some unnecessary anxiety and frustration from some of my department heads that frankly, I don't think is fair. We'll do what we gotta do. We always have, but I treat everybody the same.
I understand 100% what you're
Thank you.
saying. And I don't want to request a level funded budget because I have the same, some of the same concerns. That I don't want to see the schools come in at 6% and we've got the rest of the town at 0%.
I would turn the school budget around and cut it to the 0%.
But then the school committee and everyone else overrules and beats down the finance committee and the selectmen. So perhaps a compromise is that we as the finance committee decide, hey, we're gonna recommend the budget increase of 3%, 3.5%. And that's where we draw the line in the sand. And that's where we say, okay, the town departments came in at 3.5%, whatever it might be. The schools came in at 6%. We're not going to recommend it. And I have to remember, we all have to remember that all we're doing as the finance committee, as the board of selectmen, we're recommending to town meeting what the budget should be. Town meeting has the final say on it.
And I'm not trying to be argumentative, so please don't take it that way. But the thought in trying to get all three major boards together to determine policy for the upcoming fiscal year was to come to some sort of agreement that some people may agree with and some people don't. So I guess my thought with that was when we all walk away from that meeting, there's an expectation that is going to be met and that each of the three boards are going to make decisions based on the policy decision made by that larger group of policy makers. So I understand what you're saying and I respect it. I just want to make sure I understand where the FinCom's coming.
Yeah, and I think what I'm saying is that the finance committee would go into that meeting with a recommendation of, let's say, 3%. The selectmen come in with a recommendation of, let's say, 5%.
Sure.
And the two boards and the schools get together and say, okay, we can't live with 3%. Maybe the finance committee says, well, we can compromise at 4% and come out of that meeting with a reasonable, solid, hard number
Perfect.
that is the goal for everyone.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for clearing that up.
yes, Jonas.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in and say, well, I'm new here and I'm still learning the ins and outs of this. I firmly agree with the sentiment that public service workers should have a certain amount of certainty with their jobs going forward. And anything that interrupts that is very, very bad.
Okay.
Again, I still have a lot to learn, so.
I understand.
But I think that's a very important sentiment. And I firmly agree.
Again, we will meet whatever goals that are established. I just want to make sure that everybody follows through those because depending on what they are, they could be impactful to people's livelihood. And I'm ready to make those changes if we need to. I just don't want to do that
Suddenly
necessarily.
or suddenly. I firmly agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess the only decision that I need here is, do we want to come up with any kind of a targeted number? Or do we want to just assume that the 4, 5, 6 of us will go to this meeting and debate and talk about it then?
When's the meeting?
We haven't got it scheduled yet, but it has to be before November 1st.
Cool.
That's why I'm trying to discuss it.
I should be available if necessary.
Probably the last week of October. At this point, we've got a board meeting.
Probably not Halloween night.
October, no, not Halloween. Oh, we all could dress up and they cut the tension, who knows? I've got a meeting I know you do, that's why you're there. I got a meeting on the 22nd, board of selectmen meeting on the 22nd of October, so I was gonna suggest maybe the week of, Monday, Tuesday, the 29th, for example. I don't know what the school department has for, either regional or local school committee meetings.
I should be available either way.
I can check with Jill.
School committee, for Kingston.
I'll share.
Okay, David. As a senior man here, what's your thought?
Well, I want to know a little more numbers wise, like if we talking 3%, what's going to be our excess levy capacity? Yada, yada, you know, can I get some numbers?
So I talked to Carl a little bit about this, if you don't mind. You know,
I don't want to just arbitrarily pick
I
numbers.
appreciate that. So I've gotten a couple of presentations from other communities, kind of a state of the state type thing, that I'd like to make Kingston friendly. Which will, you know, we worked with the Department of Revenue to do a 5-year financial projection. Before Carol left, she helped update that. So we've got fiscal 24 actual revenues and expenditures. We've got fiscal 25's budget in there. We can share what the assumptions were to plug into future years, and if people disagree or want to modify, we can certainly do that. And I think that will give ideally give a clear picture that will hopefully assist, all of the elected policymakers, help them make a decision on where to go with the budget. We'll try to get that out week before this joint meeting.
Yeah, personally, I would table it till next meeting and see if we can get some numbers.
Okay. Any comments from Deb, or is that Derek on there now?
There he is.
Hi, Derek.
Hey there. No comments from me.
Okay, with that,
Is Carol on vacation or she's gone? I'm sorry.
Carol's gone. Kathleen here is her replacement, sitting at the table.
Oh, okay. Maybe I missed that.
Mumbled
I
something
guess.
about Deb and then she just walked out and never came back.
Oh, well, that's a loss. Anyways, all right. I guess I missed that conversation. I mean, I'll just say the same thing. I'm new too to the committee, and the budgets haven't been sustainable. Of course, people want to feel safe in their jobs, but yeah, I mean, these are tough times, and I think we need to take a firm stance. And sometimes, it just seems like we make recommendations and we're override anyways. So that's all I really have. So thanks.
And I think that's a good point, Deb, from the total finance committee here, that I think that we went probably 4/5 of the process last year, going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then when push came to shove, I think the vote was maybe 2-5, or 2 people disapproving the budget, including myself, and 3 or 4 saying, okay, we'll go along with it. All right, let's table that for the time being. Let's go into the warrant. I would like to, we got 20 minutes of 7 here. I would like to go through the warrant articles applicable to the finance committee in the next hour or so. And I would like to actually vote on our recommendations. I think the first one is pretty simple. It's Article 2. It's $9,000 worth of school department invoices from the prior fiscal year, which means they were prior to July 1st, and somehow they didn't get paid. So now we want to pay them. In effect, the town would be using increased revenue to offset the $9,154.60. Any questions?
One, excuse me. Is this a common annual occurrence?
It's common to have a few invoices, yes.
Okay.
I think that the finance director and her department do a great job in trying to get everything in that they can prior to the closing.
No, just curious.
But yeah, there's usually a few that slip through.
No issues.
Can I have a motion then, David?
It's fine. Figure out how to do it.
You move to recommend that the finance committee recommend approval.
Move to recommend. Move to recommend finance committee approval of prior year's bills in the amount of $9,154.60.
Do I have a second?
Jonas, say second.
Second,
I can second that.
even though I don't think the numbers add up.
They don't. We have these up.
Yeah, they don't add up. You're right. Okay.
Numbers got it.
58 plus 60 cents isn't 60 cents.
No. Numbers guy, what am I gonna do? My curse. That's all I do all day.
Slightly off and do it again. $9,15518.
Correct.
All right, so amend prior motion,
So the number is
9,15518.
91.
So move that finance committee recommends approval of prior year's bills in the amount totaling $9,155.18.
Second,
Carl, yes.
David, yes.
Jonas, yes.
Derek, yes.
Debbie, yes.
Recommended 5-0-0. The next one is Article 3, which is the schools, specifically the Kingston Elementary School has put in for a Massachusetts School Building Authority financing of a roof. We've called it different things over the last 5 years. Sometimes it's a roof replacement, sometimes it's a roof repair, sometimes it's a roof refurbishment, but in any case, they need to have the school roof replaced, refurbished sooner than later. What this article is asking for is up to really $60,000 to complete a schematic design, which is part of the requirement from the Massachusetts School Building Authority when they actually authorize the funding. Now, it's always 50-50 if we're gonna get the funding. And so if nothing happened, the $60,000 would not be utilized and would sit there. Yes, Keith.
So in talking to the superintendent over the last couple of days, the impression that they've been left with is that sometime around the end of October, the MSBA will be making a decision on whether or not Kingston is one of the recipients of funding. So this may be something we can just bypass at town meeting. Because we should know, based on what we're hearing, before town meeting, which way it's gonna go. So I don't think we're gonna have to vote it if we are gonna, we'll know whether we have to vote it, put that way.
In order of magnitude, I suspect that it'll come in somewhere a $3-4 million project, with the school building authority usually pays anywhere from 45 to 55%. So the town will be asked to fund the remaining, let's call it $2 million and if it did come through, the approval, if it was approved, the May town meeting would have an article to authorize the funding of the additional $2 million, probably through debt financing. Any questions?
So is the procedure normally, does the capital planning committee weigh in on this, or we lead and then they follow our direction? I see it looks like zero vote. Is anyone from the capital planning committee there?
So capital planning met last night. They're meeting again next week to take final votes. He's here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the chairman is here.
Normally, I would say that the capital planning committee will be involved heavily on, anything like this with an approval in advance of the, let's call it the $2 million for the next round article. For this article, where it's something that just has to be done in order to get to that point, I'm not even sure I consider it capital as much as, kind of engineering and design type of study. Okay, can we have a motion?
I move the finance committee approve the Article 3 replacement of the Kingston Elementary School roof, doors and windows. Is that what we're calling it?
No, it's just for school. I've got to change the title. That's the title change. It was initially, I think.
All right, so it's the replacement of the Kingston Elementary School roof. Funding in the amount of $60,000.
Second. Second, sorry.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
David, I.
Jonas, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
5-0-0.
Missing a comment in the start line.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that will get cleaned up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also a grammar nerd.
The next item is Article 4, which is in effect a supplemental budget for the current fiscal year for the police department in the amount of $189,116. I had sent you a copy of the detailed listing that the chief provided, but I think I'd like to give him an opportunity to step up to the table here and just kind of give us a 5 or 10 minute general update as to, what he's doing as the new chief here and, why he feels that it's necessary to be asking for a couple $100,000 to supplement the budget at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I've been asked to do certain things as a change agent with the police department. I'm an outsider, been here since April 15th. Coming into the department, I inherited a budget that was underfunded. It was woefully underfunded in terms of the specialized training area. My goals, and I've been public about them with the appointing authority, the Board of Selectmen, is to create a plan, a strategic plan for growth, look at increasing professional development and establish a plan of succession so that when I leave in anywhere from 5 to 7 years, the department is handed off clean to an in-house candidate to take over the department as the chief of police. I tried to be as objective as I could and financially responsible as I could because we're talking about spending taxpayers' money. I worked with the town administrator to present to the board what we thought on the police department, working with the command staff. I have Lieutenant Schoolbearer to my rear here and my assistant Laura Casey Pupek. And Lieutenant Bateman also worked with us to establish a list of things that would be needed in terms of professional development. And with that is the backfill of some overtime costs for some of the positions of people. When you send them off to training, you have to replace those with an overtime. There's been a lot of talk about certain things to increase this budget. But in short, the budget was out of sync with the expectations that were basically publicly discussed with the Board of Selectmen. And This is gonna get us out of the hole that we're in. We are currently operating at a deficit. And the reason for that is that we're back in the classroom doing regular in-service training, and it's not on Zoom anymore. Due to the pandemic, there was a period of time where we were doing training on shift, on a Zoom, and that's ineffective training. Typically, we're anywhere from 64 hours a year, 32 is basic in-service, and 32 is maintaining things like electronic control weapon, firearms qualifications, and a whole host of other things. So doing the training on a Zoom, it doesn't work. I spent just about every year of my career of 27 years as an instructor in the classroom. So I've said to the Board of Selectmen previously that the 3 pathways into the brain is seeing, hearing, and doing it. You're not really learning anything on shift, pulling yourself away and going to a call and then hitting the pause button on a computer laptop. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the things that are contained in the broken down sheet there that Chairman has provided you.
I don't know, if you guys don't have the copy in front of you, I've got mine right here. The total for what I call kind of the training, miscellaneous, et cetera, was $56,000. And 24,000 of that is for the Senior Management Institute. I talked to the chief about, I think his plan is to send 2 lieutenants to that. You might want to comment on that particular $24,000 item.
Sure. It's a big ticket item in the training. The Senior Management Institute for Police is hosted by Boston University. The lieutenants would live at VU for 3 weeks. There's 4 staggered sessions at the beginning of the summer. There's 68 executives from all across the country that go to each session, and they're exposed to basically higher order management and leadership level thinking and training. I told the selectmen a couple of weeks ago that when they were seeking a police chief candidate, it's specialized training like that, the Harvard Kennedy School, some training that's put on by FBI and different sources. Thank you. That made me a candidate to be in front of the board before I was appointed.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, so that's 12,000 times 2 lieutenants?
Correct.
And the other item here, there's one item here that is a little troubling to me, but I certainly am not going to turn down the $189,000 because I disagree with one of the items. And I'll talk more about that when we get into our next article, which includes capital.
What is
But the comfort dog stipend of $15,600 is the chief is trying to bring a comfort dog online and have a officer responsible for it and pay the $15,600. And there's also going to be a request for a vehicle for that. So Chief, if you want to mention, talk about the $15,600 stipend.
Pass those around the table. I don't know what you want to do for people online, but basically this is a breakdown of something that I've talked about since I got here, and that's the establishment of a family services unit. For agencies of our size and bigger, it's the trend to address mental health, substance abuse, vicarious trauma, family members of people involved in domestic violence incidents of that nature. There's 3 components. I've broken it down here, but you've got a family services clinician who's a licensed mental health clinician. That's being funded, should we receive the award, by the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health. The coordinator for that department basically applied for an extension of 10 years of that grant because it's become such a popular thing. This clinician would be shared with 2 other communities within the Silver Lake, that is Plimpton and Halifax. The reason for that is because DMH won't give the clinician just to Kingston. So if we share it within the Silver Lake region, this clinician could work within the schools. The school has written a letter of endorsement as part of the grant application. Second component of the program would be a full-time police officer to work with the clinician. And the comfort dog is something that dovetails neatly into that, to work with the clinician and the officer. The comfort dog right now is funded by a grant by the district attorney, Tim Cruz. The comfort dog is fully funded in terms of the cost of the dog by the DA. The grant will also cover components of the cruiser that will be required to upfit for the storage of food, a safe kennel for the dog, and the DA is currently funding callouts. So I attended a vigil for a tragedy that happened in Duxbury involving a Silver Lake student who lived in Pembroke. And there was, I think, probably 8 comfort dogs that were there amongst this. It was a really nice event. But all of the funding for the overtime for those dogs was paid for by the district attorney's grant. It's not going to last forever. I wouldn't be open and transparent if I was telling you that the money's there, it's going to last forever. It's subject to funding by the district attorney. He just reapplied for the grant, so he's going to continue to fund those grants and put the dogs out in the community.
Couldn't we just ask for mutual assistance from those communities when we had a need?
Sure. Yeah, we could. And there's a reciprocation for that with any mutual aid, so we switched from SWAT resources. We were formerly a member of the SEMLEC regional team. We switched over to MetroLEC because they're a bigger team with greater resources. What happens in the law enforcement world sometimes is that you get out of it what you put into it. So if we're contributing, we're going to get a better response when we call out for, SWAT, K9, peer support, or any of these things. It's the same goes for the comfort dog. We're regionally contributing and we put out the need for it and we've contributed to the program countywide, we're going to get a better response.
So let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the comfort dog's funded,
Yes,
family clinician
would be if we're awarded the grant.
funded as well?
Yep.
For like 10 years, you said though? Not in perpetuity.
No, so it's an open-ended grant. You reapply every year, and the lady that coordinates the program, she just applied for an extension for an additional 10 years.
And is she the one that keeps the dog?
No, when I say the coordinator, I'm sorry, I mean the director.
Keeping it.
He can't have the dog.
I'm a simple civilian. I can't,
The Massachusetts Department of Health, Mental Health Grants Coordinator just applied for funding for an additional 10 years.
a police officer will be given.
So one of the
Police
officers will have the dog.
Yes.
Okay.
So with the police officer handling a dog, there's a stipend for the care and feeding of the dog under the Garcia case.
And this is where the vehicle comes in.
Yes.
So now the vehicle comes into play.
Yep.
So our dog is essentially a regional dog, but we're footing the bill for the whole vehicle?
Yes. We have that already.
Would the other towns also have similar vehicles?
I mean, it's different from town to town. There's one guy that's got the most common vehicle is the Tahoe, but there's some Chevys, one Chevy Suburban. The guy's got a big Marmaduke dog. Some of them are pickup trucks. Varies from town to town.
But I guess I just want to make sure. I think I understood the question. If I didn't, I apologize. The town of Kingston will have a vehicle specifically for the comfort dog. Halifax and Plimpton will not have a vehicle for this comfort dog because the comfort dog will be an asset of the Kingston Police Department, as will the vehicle. We'll share if I understand the chief correctly, the one component that will be shared by the clinician will be supporting all 3 communities in the Silver Lake School District.
Yeah.
Is that fair? So the question I thought you asked.
Yeah,
Is all 3 towns each gonna have their own vehicle for this dog?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
No, I just want to make sure I understand.
Understood, yeah.
And is
Thank
there,
you, Chief.
and is there any, I know this is, I don't want to say it's newer, right? Or new, but it's newer. Is there any state recommendation for minimum municipality size where they recommend having this at the federal or state level?
No, not that I'm aware
I
of.
don't know.
I mean, there's agencies that are smaller, they're cutting corners, but they manage to have the district attorney give them a dog. In some cases, they had enough vehicles in the fleet to have a surplus that was turned into that. We had down to bare bones with our fleet. I addressed some of those issues early on when I first got here, so the fleet's in decent shape for the newer vehicles. The older vehicles, like one with 180,000 miles on it. I mean, it's probably not even gonna pass inspection, in which case I will take it out of service and I'll be looking for a vehicle.
So not to put you on the spot too much, Chief, but so can you give me, obviously you mentioned one incident where this dog would go in use.
Yeah.
What other instances would you utilize this animal
Yeah, it's
and the
gonna,
clinician?
yeah, so I mean, it's gonna be somebody that works within the schools at certain events that like they deem necessary. We're a partner with the Silver Lake Regional School. We have the intermediate, we have the elementary. So it's common to have a dog do certain, outreach events in the normal course of business. It would be common to have that dog visit the COA. We have a partnership with Plymouth County Outreach. I think we probably find reasons to have that dog down there with people that are suffering from substance abuse, mental health disorders, and those types of things, just in the community, not going on regional or mutual aid.
See, from my point of view, this particular one, and I understand or accept all of these charges. I also remember last year, we actually, when the chief came in, he was looking for more like $500,000 plus.
Yeah.
And we managed to discuss and compromise and work with he and the town administrator here to get that reduced by $200,000 or so. Therefore, all of the rest of these items, I have no problem with doing on an interim basis, which I normally don't like budget items on an interim basis. These I fully accept. This particular one, I would, for $15,600, I would much rather see as part of the regular budget process for the next town meeting. However, where we're voting on $189,116, I'm not going to object to that $15,600 when I will really approve and in favor of everything else. But I leave it to other members to, I suppose whatever you want to do with it.
So the numbers don't match on my sheet, right?
Same here.
If I could, on the top of the sheet, there's an amount of $12,000 for Microsoft Office.
Yep.
Okay, we back that $12,000 out. We're gonna fund that in the fiscal 25 budget. So if you back $12,000 out of 201, you get the 189.
189,
116.
116.
But inside that 189,116 is 15,600 for the comfort dog.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Can I step away from the dog for a moment? I'm sure we're all thinking about that. What is the item promotional supplies?
So it's a whole litany of things. It's not one thing.
I'm sure.
The honor guard is something that's been absent, and it was something that was in effect probably about 15 years ago. It was sporadically here and there. People would throw together the honor guard for certain events.
Sure.
We've sent officers to some formal training. We have members who are willing to step up and actually do that. Other promotional products, there's certain things that you would do at National Night Out. I don't know if you know Laura, but she runs National Night Out. It's probably the biggest in the county. There's a need for funding for that. A lot of the stuff is donated by people that will help supplement the National Night Out, things like that.
There is a separate item for honor guard, though.
That is the training and the classes.
Okay. Just want to understand.
Derek or Deb, do you have any questions or thoughts?
No, I do have one sort of thought that I want to talk about is, we talk a lot about the fact that we as a community are striving for level services. And I will say I'm all for a comfort dog, but I wonder, to what extent are we going above and beyond that with some of these purchases or with some of these expenditures. That being said, I fully intend to support the budget.
Yeah, I understand that comment, Derek, and I've made the comment to a couple of people that I've talked to about this, that in effect, I'm kind of saying, hey, my personal opinion is that anytime a new manager comes in, he or she gets somewhat of a pass to say, hey, these are things that should have been done all along, that we really have a responsibility to do, so that we have to add a couple of things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And having toured the station and having spoken to the chief, not in these meetings, sort of offline, I completely understand what he's up against and what he's trying to do. And I give him a lot of deference with that.
Thank you.
Now, go ahead.
Weren't we doing level services though last year?
Yes.
We're supplementing last year's budget,
Yep.
which was a level services budget.
Right. But again, did you hear, like, we just
Yeah.
tried to explain that we're, saying, hey, if this is an exception. But in any case, the way I see it, we have three choices here. We can approve the 189, we can recommend the $189,116. We can not recommend the $189,116, or we can subtract the $15,600, if that seems to be the only controversial one, and we can recommend 173 or whatever your number is there.
Yeah.
Calculated.
When you got to remember, it's just not the 15.
What,
There's also the back end of the vehicle.
yeah,
For
well,
another
I'm
75.
against that period, so.
So can you get the dog without the vehicle too? That is a question.
No.
Or if we approved it with the dog in there, and then we decide to not approve the vehicle, then maybe it's 6 months from now at the next town meeting that the vehicle gets approved, and he's already got in effect, the stipend approved, so that you can go forward there.
Can I make a couple comments?
So,
So,
welcomed.
policing has completely changed. I got on the job full-time in 1999. Prior to that, I was part-time police officer, part-time fire. It has evolved into something completely different than what I walked into in 1999. Dealing with the mental health, dealing with the substance abuse, it accounts for probably at least anecdotally about a third of the calls that we deal with. I understand that it's not a small number, but I'm asking for the full support. And I will say this and qualify it, that if I can find something, if I can find a community partner who wants to donate a vehicle and get some press and do it legally and have the board accept the vehicle so they can put their name on it, something like that, and it ends up being a turnback item. I understand fiscal responsibility. In my hometown, I've been a town meeting rep on and off since 1997. I sat on the charter review committee. I know that what you're doing here is an important part of the governing process. So I understand fiscal responsibility as well. I'm asking for the support for the entire amount. Thank you.
And I'm sure with your experience, you understand that every department manager that comes before us for funding always needs absolutely everything. And so that, we don't like to say no, or we don't like to not recommend. And my experience since I've been doing this is at least half the time when the finance committee recommends against something, the town meeting will override that and approve it. Okay. So again, I would ask my committee here, I guess as long as we've got that far in we can talk about them together. We've got the $189,000 in this article. We've got $75,000 to purchase the vehicle in the next article, Article 7. They are directly related. I'm 100% against purchasing the additional vehicle at this time, or recommending approval of it at this time, because I believe that capital items in almost every case should go through the normal budgeting process, the normal capital plan at regular town meeting time.
I'm sorry, Carl, we're talking about 4 and what was the other ones?
7.
Got you.
And you'll see on 7,
Yep.
there's an item, 75,000.
Yes, got you.
Are you going into all of 7 now or just?
No, I'm
mentioning
just
that?
doing the
Yeah,
the police one, 75,000. Does anybody have a comment concerning $75,000 for the police, an additional police vehicle? And remember, we just spent, what, $75,000 for a
Well, the,
new vehicle for the
For animal control.
animal control.
did CAT planning approve
Yeah,
the vehicle?
they haven't approved it yet. I don't,
Cap planning is taking their final votes next Tuesday evening.
They-
Cap planning.
they've
on-
talked
On
about
this
it.
vehicle voted favorably.
It's true, they did, they haven't voted everything, they did vote this.
It was a 3-1, I think.
okay.
Thank you.
Could I clarify?
Go ahead.
Capital Planning Committee did not vote this vehicle through. The Capital Planning Committee voted 2-1 to support the use of ARPA funds to acquire a new vehicle, not to use a capital appropriation for the vehicle. This vehicle will now put some other capital project at hazard because the two will have to be considered against one another. And that's a process we have to undergo when we vote these through and have a discussion. What are we willing to sacrifice in order to add a vehicle which is not part of level services? I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm going to give my opinion here, as I've done before about this already, is that the price of this vehicle is in line with other things we're used to buying on an annual basis. So
And it's,
2-1 vote. The vote was was ARPA funding. The vote, since ARPA funding may not come through, the vote, we have to re-vote as to whether we're going to use free cash for this, and that vote has not happened yet.
thank you, Heath.
And Heath, did you vote on any of the other items on Article 7?
We voted on the radio upgrades for police and fire, and we voted that as an ARPA appropriation. That was 3-0.
And then the other one's no vote.
Not, well, no, there is a dock replacement for the waterfront and the harbor master. They're seeking to use their own funds to replace a wooden dock with an aluminum dock. This is something we've been doing, parsing this out over the years. I think last year or the year before they spent, it might have been like $100,000 to do one section of docks, and now they're looking to do the other section this year. It's their own funds.
Okay.
That was a 3-0 vote to support them in that.
And then nothing on the playground, nothing on the fire engine?
The playground, the school assessment came in kind of last minute during our prior meeting, and the fire engine we've not voted on yet. We have some financing options to consider, and they were updated during or just before the prior meeting. So we had a lot to consider.
Okay, thank
And
you.
as it goes in capital planning, everything we do impacts another request. So we can't just go through one item after one item after one item. We have to consider everything in relation to everything else.
Okay, let's stick with the purchase of the additional vehicle. Does Deb or Derek have any question or comment concerning the additional vehicle before I call for a vote?
Just kind of a matter of clarification. If we were to not have the resources available for the comfort dog, does that impact our ability to obviously get the dog later on, or I guess I'm just worried that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot if we say no on something.
So it's time sensitive in the sense that the grant is not going to be there forever. The DA, I don't even know where he applies for the funding from, but it's not going to be there forever. The other part of your question, if we don't have the vehicle, we don't have the dog.
Thanks.
So I prefer it be on the annual, not on this. 1. 2, I wouldn't want to vote on this, on any of these, except the dock, until capital planning does their vote.
See, I disagree with that. I personally have no problem with voting what I believe the item should be, and capital planning votes what they believe. But I understand you're relying somewhat more on capital planning's decision than
Yeah,
I am.
just similar to the process we just went through with the animal control vehicle.
I understand both of your views, but I do agree with Carl in principle.
I
Okay,
just don't want to overstep that border.
so
I
do
understand that.
you want to kick the can down the road on the $75,000 vehicle?
No, I can vote tonight on Article
Second.
on Article 3
Well,
or Article 4. I can vote on Article 4.
No, okay, no, but I'm talking just
The 75?
yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm picking.
okay. All right. I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of the Article, what is it, 3? 4. Article 4, additional supplemental FY24 Police Department budget funding of $189,116. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
May I raise a question before?
Yes.
So does that does not include the vehicle separate?
Right.
Vehicle separate.
Understood, got you.
But that would include the funding
For
for
the dog.
for the dog.
Yes, got you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Kyle, aye.
David, no.
Jonas, aye.
Derek, I.
Debbie, no. And, you know, I do support the police chief. I know he's coming in and he's new and he's dealing with the deficit and trying to get the police department up to speed. I'm looking at it as strictly finance and, you know, we've got to rein in the spending. So strictly looking at that, I support you. And down the road, I would probably vote for this, but I don't know. It's election year, and I just feel like some of these things maybe we should put off if we can. That's
Okay,
that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Deb. The Finance Committee has voted 3-2 in favor of recommending the Article 4 budget at $189,116. Article 5, engineering and related costs associated with a new municipal well for the water department. The latest and greatest number that has been provided by the town administrator tonight is $1 million. It's my understanding that this $1 million is simply for the siting, testing, and engineering of the proposed well site location on the Kelleher property. The important thing to recognize here is that this $1 million will be funded through the water department and their rate structure, so that we're not being asked to appropriate any additional funding. Questions, concerns?
Could you explain, again, to a newcomer, a little bit more about how the additional funding matters in this
Well, our water department and our wastewater department are in effect separate entities. And so when either one of them spend major capital money like this, they in effect have to fund it through their rates. So that if they're in great shape, then their rate structure will take care of covering the expense of the bond issue, if that's what it is, over the 30 years or 20 years, whatever it might be.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one thing I just want to bring up, I believe at this point, Article 5 would need to be a debt, a warrant article to issue debt, which would require a 2/3 majority vote, not just a majority. So I just want to make sure that the FinCom is aware of that.
And what Keith's referring to is that all debt financing at a town meeting has to be a 2/3 vote by the residents. So to me, these things are, I've sometimes even questioned why the finance committee is even voting on something like this, that it's what are we gonna do? If we vote, we recommend no approval. Well, we've been told that the experts say we need another water well. Yeah.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree. The Board of Selectmen is the overseer of town finances, and they come here for consideration and potential approval from the Finance Committee. I don't expect the Finance Committee to identify whether or not there's more water needed for the town of Kingston. I think it's important that the water commissioners and the sewer commissioners have to come to this board to defend the requests that they're making financially, because if they don't, it goes unchecked. And with some of the changes that we've had in the sewer rates recently, I think it's important to have a check and balance there. I don't have any ability to, we can certainly make recommendations, Kathleen and I, to the water and sewer commissioners. Have no authority in the way the setup is now. So I think it's important for the finance committee to at least talk about how they're proposing to spend their funds and whether they can afford to do that.
Have you seen anything on this?
So, this came in yesterday. The change that occurred from 900,000 to $1 million occurred from the Water Commission meeting that started, I think, yesterday at 4:00 in the afternoon. The finance director and I have been looking at the water department funding, like we did with the sewer department. Again, trying to provide support. There is going to need to be a water rate increase, I believe, just to support the fiscal 25 budget. They have $300,000 in retained earnings. They have $200,000 in stabilization. They could certainly use some of that. I don't have any idea, frankly, what the cost of a new well is going to be. I can't.
You haven't seen any paperwork on bids or anything?
So where they are right now is the water department is currently out to bid for the design work that's being requested for $1 million now. That bid comes due in a couple of weeks. And we can certainly, I'm sure the water commissioners would have no issue with refining that $1 million number to the actual, which I would hope would be less. The discussion that occurred yesterday after the water commission meeting, the water commissioners wanted to make sure they had the money they needed to move forward at town meeting with the design work. So I'm hoping that the $1 million is more than what they need. I don't have any idea, frankly, what the cost of a new well is going to be. But the cost of a new well is going to be borne by current and future users. They don't have, I don't know, they can certainly do a betterment. I'm not sure if they intend to do that, but there will need to be, I believe, potentially an additional water rate increase to support a new well.
Sorry, excuse me.
Sure.
Given that this is sort of a provisional budget request, like we're looking to figure out how to make a well.
No, so I just want to correct you a little bit. And again, I wish the water commissioner or the water superintendent was here. I don't want to speak for them. They've identified a property and have for 3, 4, 5 years, I would guess. They've identified this property as a property where somehow somebody has identified that there is an ability to drill a high yield water well
That was in Rod.
on this property, huh?
That was in Rod. Tell you.
Sure. So I know the water commissioners have been in conversations with the previous owner. There was an untimely death by the owner. So it took a little extra time. To make a long story short, they got their approval to buy and have purchased this property. So this property is to do all the preliminary work that needs to occur to identify specifically where on this property is going to provide the highest yield well. So
Okay.
they've done the lion's share of the preparation. This is to get them to be able to say, the well has to be here. And this is what we estimate sinking the new well is going to cost, along with all the supporting infrastructure for that.
And what, okay, so this is the full stem to stern cost.
This is just to do the engineering
This is what I was getting
and the
at.
test well.
That's what I was asking.
This is not the construction of a
Okay.
new high yield well. That cost is anticipated to be brought forward at the spring 2025 annual town meeting. This is to develop a project cost to construct the new well.
And what do the experts say about the timetable in terms of when we need this water in town?
We did this water like 2 years ago.
Yes.
So there's right now, if you aren't aware, there's a water moratorium. So if new development is interested in coming into town, we had a car wash on Route 3A, for example, that was interested in coming into town. We had a 40B up on Pembroke Street, somewhere in the vicinity of the fire department. A lot of those have pulled back, and I think Carl talked about this at the beginning. We don't have water to sell. So if you're a vacant lot in Indian Pond, for example, they've accounted for that lot to be able to be provided water. If you have a large lot that you're looking to subdivide, for example, and you would need more than one lot's worth of water potentially, then there may be an issue there providing you water. So we need this water yesterday, frankly. So and the water commissioners have tried for the better part of 2.5 years to get the authority they thought they needed to obtain the property to get this moving. Unfortunately, with the health situation with the property owner of the property we have purchased, it delayed the acquisition of this property purchase.
All right, thank you.
Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No. Appreciate the information.
Does the finance committee want to vote on this article?
All good at home? I move that the finance committee approve the engineering and related costs associated with a new municipal well for the water department in the sum of $1 million even.
Seconded.
All in favor? Carl, I.
David, I.
Jonas, aye.
Derek, I.
I don't know. Yeah, all right, I'll vote aye.
Finance committee recommends approval of.
Resounding endorsement.
Finance committee recommends approval of Article 5,500.
Mr. Chair, I don't mean to take these, I apologize for overstepping. I'm just wondering if the FinCom would be willing to look at Article 7, so 4 or more of the people here could leave.
Yep.
Before discussing anything else, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Article 7 is the capital request on an interim basis here, instead of going through the normal capital process that we do in the end of the year, the first of the year for the annual town meeting. We have 5 separate requests here that to put it on this warrant for this special town meeting. $159,148 for public safety radio upgrades. I will ask Mark Fire Chief to speak to that item.
Certainly. Good evening. Over the past few years, we've spent primarily grant money to the tune of about $614,000 to $34,000 to upgrade the public safety radio network. In addition to that, we spent ARPA money to create a municipal radio network. That municipal radio network is completely separate and separated from the public safety network. That was funded by ARPA. That's up and running fine. So we set that aside. That's not a topic of the conversation primarily tonight. The primary topic of conversation tonight is relative to the police and fire public safety emergency radio network, if you will. There are 2 sites that we use for repeaters and receivers. One is at Monks Hill, just adjacent to the mall, if you will. The other is the water tank at Silver Lake Regional High School. Recently, as much as a few months ago, or up to a few months ago, the police began having a very significant issue with some environmental issues causing problems to their channel, their network. They're on what they call T-band. It's shared. It's a radio band that's shared by TV stations. The FCC has allowed a lot of high output transmitters within that, along with some solar flares and some other environmental issues have caused the police considerable issues on their T-band 480 network. That said, set that topic aside slightly. We are having a challenge, both police and fire. We operate on 460, them on 480, with penetration into the schools and some other buildings in that area, including the Wingate complex. Several years ago, we did a study, Joint Police Fire did a study within those buildings, and they were acceptable. I would say they were just over the line in terms of acceptable communications. Keep in mind a couple of things as I move forward with this conversation. One is police and fire operate just slightly differently. Police tend to be moving to catch a suspect, for example, or running towards an incident, whereas fire, we tend to be a little bit more slow moving in terms of the work we do. We stop, we transmit. Keep in mind as I talk about this, that when the police are running to chase a suspect, they may be going by obstructions that will cut your radio channel out. If you're not receiving a strong enough signal from your transmitter to their radio and you're moving, it's a moving target, and that can cause some issues. We have not been able to clearly define why the environmental changes have affected the radio network to the degree it has, but we have been able to define there is a lack of power in the transmission, and the transmission primarily comes from the Monks Hill Road Tower to penetrate the high school. If you drive by the high school, you'll see it's a concrete and steel building. It's got windows that are essentially reflective. They're designed for that. That's a thermopane window that's designed to reflect heat and cold, basically. And in doing that, it also, without the intent of, is reflecting radio waves. That's what it does. Our solution to this, working with our radio company, is to change from a receive site, which is a site at Pembroke Street that would only receive transmissions to it, to what they call a SIMO system, which is both sites have transmitters. That and setting the repeater at the Pembroke Street site, the new repeaters at this Pembroke Street site would put out wattage of about 100 watts to 120. That the radio company is very confident, given its location, is adequate to penetrate the buildings as necessary in that area. So that's the quick down and dirty, although it seems long, explanation of that. There's a couple of questions that come up, and I'll answer them ahead of time. And they can be somewhat sarcastic, and I accept that. We've spent a lot of money on radios. You mean to tell me it's not working? And the answer is right. Absolutely, 100%. And there is nobody besides Chief Holmes that's more frustrated at this than I am. He just arrived. This was a system that was working fine, and it slowly developed this issue. And we've challenged the radio company over the past year or so, maybe a little less than that. Why? We've gotten a ton of answers, we've researched the answers, and it really comes down to environmental issues and what in your community has changed. So I posed the question to them, if not Comcast, pardon me, but Eversource ran a power line through town, would that make a change? If they put up larger poles, would that make a change? And I think you know where I'm going with that. Would that have any effect? And the answer is yes, but it's a very difficult, unless you're right at that power line, it's a very difficult solution, or it's very difficult to blame Eversource for this problem. We can blame a lot of the environmental issues combined with that perhaps, but there's no clear solution. There's no clear reason. There is a clear solution.
Thank you, Chief. Would you elaborate a little bit when you say environmental issues?
Sure. Solar flaring is one. We're on a 12-year cycle of, it's about a 12-year cycle of solar flaring. And combined with the police, for example, being on T-band, which has been allowed to have larger, higher powered transmitters from the television stations on that, combined with the solar flaring. And I think all of us are seeing it's going on in Florida as we speak. The environmental changes. We're changing from a cooler environment to a warmer environment that has a tremendous effect on how radio waves carry and so forth. And in addition to that, what's become interesting is we on the fire side on the 460 band, for some reason, are starting to what they call skip. And it's when warm air basically carries your radio signal. We're back to what we used to have for a problem on low band, which is we're receiving the Midwest, where occasionally when we pull channel guide off, which is, I don't want to get into that, but when we pull channel guide off, you'll hear transmissions from other parts of the country. The only way that happens is to be carried over radio waves, and the only thing that carries radio waves is air. Does that all make sense?
Enough.
Okay.
Thank you. I have an electronics degree, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Does any other finance committee member have any other question? Do you want to vote this one or do you want to wait?
I want to wait.
So if anybody wants to wait, you have questions, that would be the next thing that I could get you some answers.
Nope.
Well,
Purely just, I want the other boards.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just wanted, if you needed answers, I wanted to get those too.
Nope.
Okay, how about talking about the fire engine, Mark?
Sure. So the fire engine, and I happen to agree with Kyle, quite frankly. I think that capital expenditures of this size generally belong considered in the spring. The reason I brought this is twofold. One, the engine is due to be replaced in 27, 28. It's at its 25-year end of life, if you will, or end of primary service life. And there's a 3-year delivery time on apparatus. In addition to that, this apparatus has gone up significantly in price. And I say that because I compare it to the 2022 engine that we bought or purchased, ordered, that hasn't arrived yet, in May of 22, that was $770,000. This is the same exact truck with 2 minor changes, and it's $1,082,000. So we see the prices going up. The price will again go up by approximately 4.5% this January. My concern is, and after having and I won't speak for them, but after having a fairly decent conversation with the cap plan folks, I feel confident they're going to recommend this in the spring, although certainly, again, I can't speak for them. And the price increase is approximately $48,000. So the truck wouldn't be delivered until sometime in early 28 is my latest update today, when I called the dealer. So what my thought was let's order it now. We're not paying for it 100% now by any stretch of the imagination, and you're saving the price increase that occurs in January. So you're saving $48,000. We could move forward and option 2, I suppose, we could move forward to the annual town meeting, do this then. The only difference is, frankly, it's 6 months later than now, and you've incurred a $48,000 price increase. The truck design won't change. I certainly won't, again, I won't speak, I'll say 100 times, I won't speak for the cap plan committee, although I certainly got a good feeling, and that's been on the cap plan for a while, as it's supposed to be. This putting it forward now is simply not an emergency. It's me saying you can save $48,000, and it's going to cost you $48,000 to talk about it for 6 months. that's the reality to it. I absolutely understand and agree with Mr. Pike on the way capital is typically handled. But I think, you know, you folks ask us as department heads to think out of the box, provide options to save money. And I think that this is one of those attempts to do so. As we approach next year's budget, I think you've talked about that pretty thoroughly tonight. You're going to be looking for cuts and reductions and so on and so forth. And my gut tells me, again, with the conversations that I've had, that at the end of this, they're going to vote to choose one of those options to fund it in the spring. And what would trouble me, frankly, a little bit, is that we lost the ability to save $48,000.
The only thing I would say about that is, number one, chances are we'll end up doing this over maybe a 5-year period, financing it. So it's like $10,000 a year. Number two, I don't know where interest rates are going to be 6 months from now. Maybe my lease interest rate, if I would do a lease, might be coming down. So that, to me, the $50,000 is not significant on, you know, a $1.1 million vehicle. But
And to me, $50,000 is significant.
you have a good point, no doubt about it.
And, you know, like I said, Carl, this is what you and I have talked about this for many years, and you
Yep.
charge the department heads to try to save. And this is our responsibility to bring things to you like this for you to consider. And I find it very difficult to, and that's from both the taxpayer and the department head level, to say it's okay to talk about something for 6 months and it costs you $48,000. Again, I understand everybody's point, and I tend to agree with Kyle that these things are considered typically in this range.
And you don't want to vote this one either, right? Any questions before? Thanks, Mark. Let's skip on to the playground repairs, since Dr. Whipple here, the principal of the elementary school, has been nice enough to sit through this exciting conversation. And I've heard the presentation twice now, so you know, I think we probably all of us have read somewhere or other about the playground having to be shut down. And Carrie, whatever comments you'd like to make.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of questions about like why timing, like 2 seconds before school opens. And just to clarify, just because I get that question from everyone, we were on a wait list for a while to get inspected. I had zero idea that this would happen. I don't have the lens of a playground inspector, so just not my area of expertise. So when they came and shut it down, you can imagine we were like,
I'm sorry, could you just back up a little bit and give us a little more background for those of us who don't know what exactly happened?
yeah, so we had the playground inspected. We were on a list to have inspected for a while, for months. And then the person came inspected it in late August and then shut it down that moment. So you can imagine as I walked out, she wanted to show and point everything out.
Is this both playgrounds?
Just our playground, KES. Yep.
It's the elementary school.
Not the preschool one?
Nope, no.
Just
no.
the main one?
Yep. So that was like a really immediate, holy cow, you're shutting down the playground right before we opened school. So after that happened, we kind of started talking, looking around. We had the person who built it, O'Brien, to come and take a look at it and say, hey, is this a complete shutdown, or can we fix this and repair it so that it's safe? And he said, absolutely, there's repairs that we can have done, and we can say that it's safe for everyone to use. It's a community playground. School is only 180 days of the year. The community uses it after school, on weekends, school vacations, and summers. There's one elementary school in Kingston, where I live. There's 8 elementary schools in Plymouth, and there's probably 20 playgrounds in Plymouth, but there's not as much in Kingston. So we feel really strongly that we've got to get the kids back out there playing on that playground. So we are looking to, it costs $76,000 to fix it. I think there's some things out there like, well, we're already gonna have to build a new one. This will save us like 8 years. This will get us by 8 years for us to be able to plan and really truly fundraise over the course of 5 to 8 years to build a new playground that would be great for the community. But in the short term, we got to get this fixed for the kids. So it's a $76,000 bill right now. I'm working on fundraising and some other ways through the budget to get some money. Right now, we have $6,000 through KFE and PTO, so we're at $70,000. I hope by the time it gets to town meeting, that it's significantly less than that.
And nothing's warranted, right? It's like 20 years old. The playground as
It's
it is.
22, is in March 2002, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So nothing's warranted.
yeah,
is what it
correct.
is.
It's over. Yeah, the warranty's gone. Yeah.
Any questions from Deb or Derek? Dave, you have anything else?
No, so essentially 76 grand is buying us another 5
5
to
to
8
8 years,
years.
yeah.
And then we'll talk about
Much larger
a
bill.
much larger bill.
However, we have a significant amount of time to fundraise. And what I know and love about Kingston is the community. It's incredible. It does what it needs for the kids. It really supports the community.
I think, I don't want to speak for the school part of it, as fundraising occurs, like you said, this might be the town meeting, we may be able to make a motion to reduce the
Yeah.
76,000 by some amount of money of the generous donations that you receive.
Yep. And we're looking at some other ways through the budget as well, but we have a school committee meeting coming up on the 16th to discuss that too.
Okay, I'd say we're gonna defer this one too, right?
Yeah, due to
All right.
procedure, I'm deferring the whole article until they vote on it.
Does anybody want to comment on, just to give our guests here an idea about, where we're landing on some of these items? For instance, the playground repairs, I'm ready to approve.
I would concur.
Deb and Derek, do you have any indication of what you'd want to do?
I'm probably a blanket yes across all of them.
Okay. Deb,
Oh,
specifically the playground repairs.
yeah, no, I mean, and I've saw on Facebook, people are all, and I've got young kids. I certainly appreciate playground. I'm just looking at it from finance. I don't want to approve anything.
I understand.
Really. So, that's where I'm at.
Okay, I think that we can at least let Kerry know that it would appear that there's a good chance that the finance committee will recommend that this playground repairs be approved at town meeting. One thing I have learned tonight is that next town meeting, I will schedule a review of the articles for the night before town meeting so that we'll have all the information we can possibly need. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Article 8,
Do we want to go back to where we left off?
the doc, I guess the only one we have.
No, I mean, we've gone through,
The doc.
we didn't talk about
Article
6.
6. Employee liability.
Okay,
Get on that.
Article 6 is a few years ago here, we established a so-called employment liability reserve fund. The theory being that we were getting some retirements where we would have to pay out $100,000 or $60,000 of accumulated vacation time. And so we decided that we ought to act more like a real business and establish a reserve so that we've been expensing X number of dollars and trying to keep a reserve for this at about $100,000. Keith and the town director of finance here have done an analysis, and we have a couple of major retirements coming up that will require an additional $25,256 to fund their payouts when they leave. So that's all this article is doing, is saying, hey, we're going to have to expense $25,256 more than we have sitting in that reserve. But those of us who, yeah,
Question. Maybe a stupid question.
never.
If the funds weren't there, what would happen?
It would have to be in effect, it would be expensed against some line item in the budget. And if that put them over the budget, then we'd probably worry about making a transfer between departments or something
Okay.
at the end of the year.
Okay.
Does that sound half logical?
That's correct.
From an accountant, an ex-accountant here? So to me, it's pretty straightforward. And the reason when we set this up way back when, we set a limit on it of $100,000. So that's why, you know, when you get a major retirement, the payout can be close to $100,000. Somebody that worked there, 25 years and accumulated all of this vacation time, and we had a chief of police who retired. We're having I call them DPW retirement.
Yeah.
So, it's why it needs additional funding. Therefore, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article 6 to fund $25,256 to the Employment Liability Reserve.
Second,
All in favor? Carl, aye.
David, I.
Jonas,
Derek, I.
Debbie, aye.
Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 6, 500. Article 7 that we've been talking about, add Marcius here. I think we understand the radios, the engine one replacement, the additional vehicle for the police department, $60,000 dock replacement is something that will be done down at the waterfront, and it will be funded by the Waterways Fund, which in turn is funded by fees for moorings, boats, etc. Does anybody have any questions on that? And the $76,000 for the playground repairs that we just talked about. So we will vote all of these items on our meeting a week from tonight. Article 8 is to authorize the Board of Health to continue participation in the State Septic Betterment Loan Program. This is a state program that's financed by the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust that allows people to put in new sewer systems in their new private sewer systems at their houses and with a loan from the town. The loan is financed by the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. We're asking for $400,000 here. But what will really happen is that $400,000 becomes like a line of credit for the town with the Clean Water Trust. And my experience when I was treasurer, we draw down $50,000 or $100,000 at a time, so that any one time the town will have, say, $100,000 loan from the Clean Water Trust. Then that will then be issued out to anybody that's putting in a new sewer system. Very few. I was treasurer for 3 years, and I think there were 3 loans made over those 3 years. And then the owner of the home for the new sewer, it just gets added on to his quarterly real estate tax bill, and he pays the town back.
Small question. Does the town have any liability in the case of default?
I would say yes, that the town would be on the hook for that money.
If a homeowner were to,
It's lien.
So I think what would happen is that, there's a lien placed on the property.
Yeah.
So if they defaulted, ultimately the town would recoup those funds when the property is sold and the proceeds from that property. Is there a risk there's no proceeds? Sure. But I think overall we've had tremendous success with this program to help people out with sewer, with septic.
And are there other, I mean, I guess I'm struggling to understand. It sounds like this is like a pass through from the state program through the town to homeowners.
So the town has to authorize, to Mr. Pike's point, kind of a line of credit to allow Kingston residents in this case to participate in the program.
But it sounds like the town is not on the hook for.
No. We actually, we're not gonna give the state.
This is what I mean.
$400,000.
Yeah, this is what I mean by pass through.
Yeah.
Like basically, we're just authorizing the acceptance of funds from the state,
Yep.
then go just to
Yep.
homeowners. And then they go back.
They repay it.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Any questions? Have a motion? Me too.
I move the finance committee recommend approval of the to authorize the Board of Health to continue participating in the state septic betterment loan program. Appropriate the sum of 400,000 even.
Seconded.
All in favor? Kyle, I.
David, I.
Jonas, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 8500. I think that's it. Article 11, Wage and Personnel Bylaw. Normally, the Finance Committee will vote on this one because it will have rate changes in it that can have financial impact. But this is only to authorize 2 new positions, one of which probably should have never been done away with to begin with.
Which article? Tom?
Article 11.
What did we skip 9?
Oh, it's good.
We skip, yeah, because we don't, there's no financial impact there.
We're listed here though.
We'll remove that. If the FinCom wants to remove it, we'll remove it.
Okay.
So anyhow, Article 11, all they're doing is bringing back the Inspector of Building Zoning Enforcement Officer. I guess they're changing the title to it and classify the position. So I say that that's not a finance related one. And the rest of these are articles that you certainly want to read and understand and vote your personal feelings at town meeting.
So would you like me to remove Finance Committee from Article 11?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The only other thing that I kind of skipped over here when I was looking at my notes, the first thing I should have done tonight is it's that time of year when we ought to discuss, do we want to do a reorganization? We didn't do it the last meeting because there were only 3 of us here, I think. Now, tonight, we've got at least 5 out of the 6. So do we want to do a reorganization to appoint a committee chairman and a committee vice chairman?
Sure, I nominate Carl Pike for committee chairman.
Seconded.
Let me say this, that unfortunately, Mike, our vice chairman, isn't here tonight, but he and I have talked, and I've said that I have 2 years left in this current term of the Finance Committee, and that I would be willing to be the chairman this year and continue to work with, Mike as vice chair, the rest of yous, as important members of the committee, with the idea of next year definitely having somebody else step up and become the chairman. And I would be here for another year to help mentor or help get us through, that transition. And then maybe I'll go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals. But in any case, if people are happy right now to have me be continuous chairman, I'm okay with that for this year.
Why don't you stop stealing my candy?
No objection.
Laura brought that in for me too. And vice chairman, do you want to keep Mike as vice chair, or do we not want to make another nomination for vice chair?
I nominate Mike in absentia.
Yeah, he's not here.
That's what it is, essentially.
Yeah, I know, but. I know, but. I don't know if I want to vote on it with him. I don't know what he's got going on.
All right.
Does he want to step down? Does he, I don't know what he wants to do.
Yeah, I actually, when he emailed me today or texted me that he wasn't going to be able to make it, I asked him, but he didn't get back to me. So, okay.
Oh, he
we can-
ghosted you. That's what the kids call it.
Exactly. We can discuss that again.
It is October.
We can discuss that again at the meeting next week.
Mhm.
So I guess I would ask if any member has any other comments or questions. I kind of informally welcome Jonas here at the beginning of the meeting, and we're glad to have another full-time member here, and welcome aboard. Like I say, I'm hoping that we'll have a seventh member, if not next week, certainly at our meeting after that. What I would think is that the next meeting we'll schedule, and it'll be a meeting that I call it almost voluntary if you want to go or not, is when Keith gets a meeting scheduled for the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the FinCom to get together. After that, we may not need another meeting until, I would say maybe February, I believe. We put in the new budget process article there, item, that the budget would be to FinCom by February 15th. And I think that was with the idea that we would try to get it closer to February 1st, depending on the status with the Board of Selectmen's review, et cetera. Since Keith's been here, he does a great job in working with the Director of Finance of creating a budget with the department managers, getting it in front of the Board of Selectmen, and at least having them have a first pass at it before it gets to the Finance Committee. I would hope that it gets to the Finance Committee as early in February as possible, because we then start, my position was, well, if February 15th is the deadline, we've probably got until April 15th. So as long as town meeting isn't until early May, we're in pretty good shape. Because I know last year, a couple of members thought that February 15th was awfully late. And that's when we said, if we can get it early February, we will. The town administrator, the Director of Finance, and the selectmen have always been very good at, having Finance Committee start looking at things. And I've always said that when we're looking at things early on, maybe we're sitting down with the police chief and the fire chief, and maybe their budgets are fairly final. And so we can at least get those out of the way, and recognizing that there may be a lot of other things that are going to be changes, et cetera. Does anybody on the Finance Committee have any questions, comments, critiques?
No, so just to recap, next week, board reorg, Article 7,
Correct.
and then numbers to talk about next year's budget, whether we're gonna do level services, level funded. We're gonna have those ahead of time, hopefully.
We will try to get some information. It's a lot of that is difficult to get.
Okay.
Well, what you can do is you can say, okay, we're going to estimate the revenue. In effect, you're going to do a pro forma financial statement is what you're asking for.
So I'm sorry, what I was trying to do is have a meeting during the week of the 28th of October. It is the group meeting. And the week before that, try to get out that pro forma to all three boards, so they have some time to review, understand, and be prepared to meet, if that's okay with this group.
Okay. So next week's really just reorg and articles.
Right. Although I would
You're gonna throw a little something in there for us.
Well, maybe, yeah, a little kind of a summary that, hey, here's the FY 25 budget. Let's assume these revenue numbers, and here's what it looks like if you have a 3% bottom line increase. Because it gets complicated with the values, making a judgment on what the 2.5% amount is going to be.
And if I could, I mean, I think, talking to both Kathleen and Maureen, our assessor, you know, they'll be very, very, very as part of the fiscal 26 calculation, Proposition 2.5, because of the water moratorium.
So that's why Mr. Pike likes that 3% number.
I understand, and I think it's gonna be, so I guess what I'm trying to say, it might be easier to get a better sense of where we are, working through the calculation to see where we are for, you know, tax levy.
Yeah.
Because we aren't gonna have the potential of significant growth numbers like we've seen in the past few years. That's all.
Residents, you hear that every time you say no to this commercial project or that commercial project. That's why your real estate taxes keep going up.
Is there, if I could just ask one more question, so the week of the 28th, Thursday night is Halloween. Is there a night that either any of you have an issue with on the week of the 28th that I can try to avoid if at all possible? You don't tell me now, just let me know.
Wait, other than Halloween, later in the week is better for me generally, but I'm pretty flexible.
Okay, thank you.
Can we do away with Halloween? This old guy doesn't like Halloween.
Well,
This is my grandmother's
Evidence
birthday.
of the candy, not what's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get you the pointed hat and the broom.
So Halloween's on a
We do a little
Thursday night.
surveillance over here, guys.
Tuesday.
I think there's proof.
29.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, 29.
Okay, I'll try for that day. The impression I got from Dr. Whipple was the 22nd was Kingston's local school committee meeting, so that might, so the 22nd, so we'll do the 29th.
Oh, okay.
So I'll try for Tuesday the 29th. And I'll try to set that up and let everybody know early next week.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Excellent.
If there's no other comments or questions,
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
all in favor? Carl, I.
David, aye.
Aye.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.